Hey guys, and welcome to Petrol Ped, and welcome to a very sunny Essex, and to the latest in our series of videos tracking the progress of the Nichols N1A. I've come down to Essex today to visit APH3G because the next video we're going to look at is the bodywork of the M1A. We've already had a chat with Steve and John about the genesis of the car. We had a chat with Bob Mustard about the incredible technology in the chassis, and now it's time to clad the car in its amazing bodywork. So I'm going to pop inside and find out what's going on today. Welcome back to the channel, John.
Thanks, Pete.
The next chapter of the Nichols N1A is a really exciting one because it's bodywork time.
Yep, it's bodywork time, and in the background we've got a car actually being built on the.
So the chassis we saw in the last video. Yep. Engine on?
The chassis, the chassis is up on trestles. The engine is in it. The gearbox is in it. Suspension should be turning up next week.
You must be beside yourself excited.
It's great, yeah. I'm really looking forward to seeing it on the road and getting behind the wheel. Cool. And I mean, the engine is something else. It started off as an LS7, but there's not a lot of that left, and
really?
We'll be well above 600 brake horsepower in not a lot of weight. So yeah,
this is what we like. This is what we like. So we're here today to talk about the bodywork, and I thought it'd be really interesting to kind of go through the evolution from what you now start to refer to as the black car, but the pre-production car that we saw in the first video.
Yeah.
So talk us through that bodywork was quite a kind of I'm going to use the word Heath Robinson. Forgive me for that.
I think that's probably fairly accurate.
But it was a bit of a cut and shut from lots of other things.
It was,
hand roll, bits of original M1A.
There were a few bits hiding in there. Yeah, I mean that. I mean, we had the idea of doing the car, and the mechanical side we knew we could do. You know, you got a sophisticated chassis, good suspension, lots of power, not much weight, so you know that bit is going to work properly. But the idea of taking the original McLaren shape and saying, well, can we actually update that and make it into something which looks concurrent, but obviously has a nod to the original car. I mean, will that work?
Yeah.
So that really was the turning point in the project, I suppose, to make the decision. Well, we'll build one. Let's see how it turns out. So that original black car was done really by eye. We had access to an original M1A shell. So that there were reference points that we could pick up from that. One of the decisions to make was which side we'd base ours on, because it was fairly, fairly.
The cars back then, they were handmade, right? They were done by eye, and modern day cars are so perfect.
Yeah. Well, on this one, the Bruce McLaren built it as a one-off, and it was done in aluminium. That's the way people did them. So it was just, a very clever man with an English wheel and a hammer and making the shape. And what he would do the one side and then sort of repeat it for the other, and that's how it was done. And no one really worried too much because it was a racing car.
Yeah.
And production cars were pretty bad anyway. I mean, someone told me that the first Range Rover is about 1.5 inches difference side to side if you look at where it sits over the wheels.
I've seen that in production Ferraris, the old test crosses and stuff. In Vintage Voltage, we did a 308 and that was out by 15 mil from one side to the other. So that's fine for a prototype. Yeah. But to go into full production, so
not good enough.
Not
obviously.
Good enough.
No. So it's really how we go from there to getting a proper production vehicle. And I initially thought that we could probably, finesse the one that we got, the black car, and actually get it to the stage where you could take moulds from it, and that would be good enough and would do the job. But the more we looked into it, the more we wanted to do it properly. I was trying to think this morning when I first came into contact with Andy and the group here, and it was probably about 12 years ago when I looked very seriously at buying TVR, and got a long way into the process. We were doing due diligence and asking, I think, too many awkward questions because Mr. Smolensky decided that he didn't like dealing.
Oh, really?
So that was the end of that.
So you didn't buy TVR?
I didn't.
Oh,
no,
okay.
I didn't. Thank God for that. I'd met Andy in that process, and Steve also knew of him through another route. A big friend of his had designed the Lola Caterham 300, I think it's called, which was and that was done here. And and that was a nice, nicely finished,
good-looking car.
Nicely finished job. So I knew that they were good people. And when we looked to do the N1A, I invited Andy down to see the black car and said, "Look, there it is. Nothing to it, is there, Andy?" And he said, "Well, he said you're not going to be happy with the result. By the time it's going to take weeks to actually get the finish that you're going to be looking for." And he said the fact that it's matte black means that there are a lot of flaws in it that you aren't seeing. If it was sprayed gloss black, or if it was wrapped or whatever, he said you'd really see that. You
could have done a Henry Ford and just sold the M1A in any colour but matte, as long as it's matte black.
We could have done that. The only problem with that is that Steve hates matte black.
Oh, right.
Absolutely hates matte black.
So that's not going to happen, because he's going to want one.
No. So no, we had to we had to look at another way of doing it, and Andy suggested that we scan that car,
right,
and then recreate the body properly, put the surfaces on properly. And then from that data, produce the moulds direct, so that the scan actually produces the surface data from which the moulds are made. And the other good thing about that is that the chassis company and the bodywork company were working together on the same model, so everything fitted.
So the bodywork actually fits the chassis.
It fits, and that was another reason for doing it properly. We mentioned how horrendous TVR tooling was. I mean, it was just, I think they had no idea how long it took them to build a car, because there was so much hand finishing going on. I saw a cigarist, one of the last ones to come out of the mould, and it was, the whole surface layer was filler. I mean, and so someone was actually making that whole thing, putting the whole of the surface on it.
Yeah, so if you've got a cigarist in your garage.
Yes, a lot of work went into that.
And that's kind of why we're sat here, because we've got the CAD screen behind us with a very lovely render of an M1A. So you've taken the black car, you've scanned it, you've made it right, left and right, front and rear, so it's now symmetrical.
Yes.
Excellent, it's always a good thing. And then you've done some aero work as well. Yeah,
we did some aero work. I mean, I guess there were two big changes over the black car. The first was that we wanted to put some more length in the wheelbase, just to get a bit more driving, get bigger.
So I can fit in it.
Yeah, people like you can fit in it. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, it's very important.
So we had about 2 inches extra to accommodate, and that has a hell of a knock-on effect in the way that the thing how it looks visually, how the balance is, and where you lose it. And so that affected every panel on the car doing that. So the position of the front clam, the way the screen is positioned, the way the shut line from the screen to the door is done, and then the door, obviously there's a reasonable amount of material added to that, but then that in itself, from the plan view, it alters the sweep of the screen going around. So it really it's
which if you were doing that physically rather than in a 3D model would be a nightmare.
It would. It would be a nightmare. Yeah, it would. Yeah. And then the other thing, as you say, we went into the wind tunnel, and we'd done the original, the black car, mindful of the fact that, knowing what we know now, that we needed to do things to it. So there are aerodynamic tricks that we incorporated into the the styling of that. And it was pretty good. I mean, first time out, we were showing no lift on the front, but we were getting lift at the back. And we had got, we had a lot of wooden panels and add-ons and so on. So we knew what we needed to do to get some downforce on the front and then to balance it with downforce at the rear as well. Essentially, it meant raising the profile of the rear deck. I mean, that, in very simple terms, that's what it was. But with all of the visual changes, I was incredibly nervous because the reaction to the black car was just amazing. Everywhere you went, people said, "What a fantastic!"
Make it like that.
Yeah. So I was really worried about,
You don't want to be sticking a big wing on the back.
No. But even subtle stuff, that you change. And the back is significantly raised. I think it's probably 4 or 5 inches higher at the back now.
Wow!
But I hope casually you won't know the difference. And that was something else. So that we did on the CAD, and I was leaning over the designer's shoulder for several days, saying, "Look, this is where it needs to be," and then he was blending it in. And
I've got to say, mate, it just looks proper. Absolutely proper.
Yeah, I'm really
You must
I'm
be
really pleased.
So excited right now. Excited.
I am. And
so it looks really good on the screen. But I reckon I'll pop next door and have a chat with Andy to find out how you go from a 3D model like that to making the moulding to then make the bodywork that we can then put on the car.
Yep.
But it's it's such an interesting project, seeing it all slowly fall into place.
Yeah, and hopefully seeing that it's done properly at every stage.
Absolutely. Yeah. Right, let's go and have a chat with Andy. Now then, guys, let me introduce Andy from APH3G. So, what we've got in front of us, this looks very familiar. It's an inside-out front clamshell of an N1A.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, we thought we'd have a chat about, we've talked to John about how we took car one, digitized it, turned it into a CAD model. You guys have then taken that CAD model and made the tooling. So I really wanted to get under the skin of how. So I see what I did there, under the skin.
Under the skin. Yeah, I got that.
Of how we take how you make the model and then how you make the bodywork.
Right. Okay. So from taking the CAD design when it's actually complete and everyone's happy and it's signed off and any alterations, modifications, etc. have been done, we'll then move on to actually making the tool design. First port call is in the office where I think you've already met Stuart, who looks after the CAD side of things for us in there. He will create the tool drawings, so what you see here in as individual components. We'll then go from Stuart out to the shop floor. On the shop floor, the guys will block it up as close as they can to the overall size, basically incorporating all the resin block into it.
What's this actually made of?
So it's a polyurethane model board. They come in various densities. The higher the density, effectively the higher the cost. We use a lower density board for the main areas, and for any intricate areas we start to use some higher density. So it goes out to the shop floor, gets blocked up there, it goes round to the CNC machines, and the guys will then machine out the actual model itself to the shape, which will end up looking like the yellow colour you see at the top there before it's sprayed. After it comes off the machines, it will come round, it will be bedded out and rubbed down and then primed, getting a decent finish onto the tool, which is we're in the stage of that at the moment. So currently we're actually finishing off rubbing down the parts, spraying them up and getting it ready to actually take the first part out of the tool.
And then the bodywork for car one, if you like, production car one, is GRP bodywork.
Yes, the first car will be GRP.
So you just lay that down in there and that forms the shape of the clamp?
Yeah, so we'll end up initially, what we'll start with is a double gel and then some tissue in certain areas, on the intricate areas where there's tight radiuses and things. From that point then we've got, once it's laminated, we've got things in place like this up here to create the datum points for where the hinge is going to pivot from, which is important to know. So having the CAD or going the CAD route effectively means that we can datum and position those. We hang off the bracket on the underside of the bracket you see there. That will then be laminated in position, giving us a hard point, knowing that all of our pivot points are correct, and that's crucial in the assembly of the vehicle at the other end. But going the CAD route means we can do that.
Yeah, and I know certainly talking to John and yourself, the big benefit of having it now in a kind of 3D model is when you make these bits, every part will be the same.
Yes.
They'll match the chassis that we've already seen
Yep.
being made. That makes the assembly quicker. Downside of that is you've got to make the tooling, right? So there's a payoff. You invest in good tooling, you end up with a repeatable quality product, right? So.
Yeah, at that point it's very, very repeatable. Each part will come out of the mold tool exactly the same. All your hard points, your datum points, etc., remain exactly where they need to be. You know, we've got stuff on the side here for the catches, etc.
Yeah.
They're modelled in. You know, we can check it. We've got full CMM inspection equipment here, so we can check that it's actually correct and been machined as per the CAD data as well. Yeah. As a double check and a backup.
Yeah. The other thing is, so the Car 1, as I'm now going to start calling it, I don't know whether John is, but I am. So that's going to have a GRP body. But if a customer wanted to have a more exotic material like carbon fibre that was painted, or go the whole hog and have exposed weave carbon fibre with a nice lacquer on the top, you've got the fundamental tools to do that. You just need to evolve the tool a little bit to help you make that.
Exactly that. We'll take the tool from here, make a carbon tool from what we've got, and then progress it from there. So it's an on-cost down the line. It's just, it can all be done.
Yeah,
it's not a problem at all.
Now, the two bits that are in the recess here, I guess we've got this one here. That's a headlamp.
Yes.
I'm guessing.
Yes.
For all of the various, the actual lamp itself and the internals.
Yep.
But that leads us on nicely to the glass on the windscreen, the side screens, and also we've got here the glass that's going to go onto the headlamp.
Yes, so this particular glazing
so the
panel
difference in forming that, so this is, you're laying kind of GRP down into that. This is a high strength perspex, I guess.
Polycarbonate.
Yeah.
So
And that, so how do you make that? There's the tool for it. Similar process?
Similar sorts of processes as regards the CAD design of the tool, and then just a different process in the manufacture side of things. When making glazings and things, obviously you want the clarity to be as good as it can possibly be. We've got processes in-house to do vacuum forming, we can do drape forming, etc. And drape forming for this particular component is definitely the best way forward, because it's not got a fierce sort of geometry shape to it, which allows us to form it at a lower temperature, keeping the clarity very, very good. So basically the tool will be manufactured like we see here. We'll heat the plastic in an oven, drape over the tool to get the shape, let it cool down. We'll then put this back onto the tool, put it onto the 5-axis CNC, trim out again, trimmed as per CAD.
Yeah.
So that, you know, this trim condition around here will be extremely accurate, so it'll fit into the recess on the headlamps perfectly. And then
it's a cool piece. We've actually already kind of watched the side screens being trimmed out, so I'll put that footage over as we're talking. The interesting thing about these lenses is, talking to John, the lenses on the original N1A were just a flat piece of perspex, I believe. These have got this really subtle, curvature to them to follow the form of the front of the car.
Exactly.
Right?
I think you'd have found the first ones were probably a thinner plastic and just literally force bent in place and bonded.
They're a beautiful thing, really beautiful thing. So there you go. So
we use the same process for the screen itself, and also then the side glass as well. So it's exactly the same type of process, trimmed out via CNC and drape formed to give the clarity.
So whereabouts are we? So this has still got some work to be done in terms of before you can start laying the.
Yes.
It needs to kind of be.
So we've got to be. This is going to be rubbed down now and finished off. It'll be sprayed again to a higher standard. Obviously, what you see here, this is only the primer coat as we see.
Yeah.
After that, it will be, once it comes out of spray, we'll then polish it. So with some G3, etc., the compounds go through that to get a really high finish or high gloss finish on it. And at that point, we'll then take the GRP off.
Yeah.
And it'll give us just a better surface finish thereafter. You know, these cars are going to be sprayed to the customer's requirements. They could be vinyl, they could be whatever. But then once we get this, you know, once the part comes off, we'll just give it a light key up for the paint, and it's ready for John to spray.
So what I find fascinating is the processes you're doing on this mould are not dissimilar to the processes you do on a body panel if you were spraying a car. You know, you prime it, you rub it down, you prime it again, you rub it down, and you know, preparation here makes the end result even
Yeah,
better.
it's a bit painful.
Yeah, because I see just outside the other side of those shutters is the rear clamshell, and that's being rubbed down at the moment, and there's like lots and lots of elbow grease going.
There's a lot of work goes in. To be honest with you, it doesn't take too long to cut. You can actually burn hours and days in actually the finishing touches, but the more time you spend front end, the better product you get back end. It's as simple as that, and the more repeatable. And you know, if there's a mark in this tool, for instance, every time you make a part, you've got the mark in the part itself, so you'll be rubbing it out of the part every time. Just make sure you get the tooling spot on, and then your life's going to be a lot easier. Yeah.
Well, mate, fascinating. You know me, I always love coming to see how things are made. This is not a process I've seen before. And I cannot wait to see what the body panels that come out of this mould look like when they're on the car.
Get to see the finished article.
Talking to John, the car now is the chassis that we saw in the last video has an engine in the back of it, and we're waiting for some suspension components and then the body panels, and we're getting close to seeing the car running. But mate, thank you very much for showing me around.
No problem at all.
And yeah, really, really interesting. So there you go. What a fascinating morning I've spent here at APH3G looking at the fabrication of the body panels for the N1A. By the way, this is actually the mould for the rear clamshell section of the car. It's not quite as advanced as the front one we saw earlier on in the film. It's still got lots of prep work. But I love coming and seeing how things are made. I hope you're enjoying this series that we're doing, watching the development of such a special car. It's getting very close now to being able to hear it and see it drive for the first time. But I want to say a big thanks to John and all the team at Nichols Cars, also to the team here for access to the manufacturing process. As always, a massive shout out to my mate Nick Williams for coming along and taking lots of lovely photographs. But stay tuned. The next video, I think we're going to be looking at the chassis and the suspension components all going together and looking at the setup underneath the car. And then hopefully at some point in the very near future, we'll actually get to drive it as well. But for now, I'm going to get back in the car. It's a long drive home. I hope you've enjoyed this one. If you have done so, please give me a thumbs up. Comments below are always welcome. And if you haven't done so already, please subscribe to Petrol Ped for plenty more content to come. And I'll see you on the next film. You take care, guys. Drive safe.